Today, we are taking every single Splatoon boss battle and ranking them from the easiest to the most difficult. Of course, number one being the most difficult boss we've had in the entire series. So today we have a total of 22 different bosses throughout the franchise that we are going to put on this ranking video. Now, of course, this is my list. Of course, if you disagree, that is perfectly fine. Let me know in the comments down below what your list would have been and what you would have switched and how you liked this list in this video. But if you enjoyed the video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to stay up to date on all things Splatoon and all things Nintendo in general. Now, without further ado, let's jump into the list of the easiest to hardest boss battles throughout the Splatoon franchise. Starting at 22, we have the Octo Nozzle. The Octo Nozzle is just super underwhelming. The boss battle itself isn't that good, and also it's just incredibly easy. It's the second boss of Splatoon 1, and it's really just the most easiest boss I think I've ever fought in a Nintendo game. Okay, probably not the easiest, but it is pretty easy. It shoots these like really slow goo balls at you, like incredibly slow, whether they're big ones, small ones. It is so easy to just step to the right or step to the left, and you shoot these tentacle things on his body, and you could probably beat this boss in about 30 seconds. Like seriously, even on your first time, it would be under a minute. This boss poses really no threat at all, and it's one of the easiest bosses in the series. Coming in at number 21, we have the Octo Stomp. This is the very first boss of the Splatoon series, and it's a good first boss, but it's really not that hard. All you have to do is barely swim to the left or to the right, and you have plenty enough time to move before it smashes you in the head. The only thing that kind of makes this difficult within the different rounds is different pieces of its side kind of fall off, and you have to swim up a specific pattern on the panels, which makes it a tiny bit difficult, but really still no problem whatsoever. It's really just teaching you the basics of boss battles before you get into the deep part of the game. Can we agree that the Octobot needs to just retire and we need to stop fighting DJ Octavio? This is the third time that we've seen this bot in a remixed form, I guess, and it's still always the same exact formula, and it's somehow going down from the very first time we fought him. It's just so simple, and I know this is the first boss of the game, but we are on Splatoon 3 now. Why are we still having this same concept? He shoots his fist at you, you shoot them back. It's that simple. The only way it gets any sort of difficult is now he has a vacuum that you have to clog up with Little Buddy, and he can also shoot like wave breaker markers all over the floor that you have to jump over, and maybe he has like one or two new specials, but it's just like he's this giant robot with legs now and arms, and he can like fly across the stage but doesn't do anything. He doesn't drop bombs, doesn't do anything but just kind of reposition himself, and it's really like no point. If we have to fight Octavio again in the future, please for the love of God drop the fist thing, Nintendo. And of course, number 19, we have Octobot King 2, featuring Callie this time. Yeah, this is the final boss of Splatoon 2, and it's also a pretty big letdown. I think this one's worse because it's the final boss and not the first boss like it was in Splatoon 3. It's the same thing from the first game. He's shooting fists at you, you shoot them back. There's some that you can't shoot back, you dodge them, then eventually you knock him out of the bot onto the stage, and you shoot him back. It's rinse and repeat the same stuff, and it just drags on for a very long time. This one's technically a little bit more difficult because now there's more things being tossed at you like splat bombs and suction bombs and stuff thanks to Callie, but for the most part, it's pretty easy. Believe it or not, for the first time, the hardest part for me was the second part where you're on the grind rails shooting giant blasts with the Rainmaker at DJ Octavio in midair. It's a really cool looking scene, but it's also very easy. Why did I used to get hit? Because I thought you had to switch rails back and forth all the time and I always got punched until I realized you literally don't even have to switch rails. Just keep jumping up and down when something comes. That's all you have to do. Yep, you don't even need that second rail the entire time. It's just there for, I guess, swag points. But this boss definitely wasn't great to end the game, and it was incredibly easy. Next up, we have Malls from Splatoon 1. Nope, not the boss salmonid, but this time a giant robotic shark fish. This thing is actually really unique. I love shooting its different types of teeth, and it can be kind of difficult as you get to the later versions of the teeth, especially the gold ones, because if you're not hurry up and firing in one specific direction and breaking the first couple teeth you see, you can get trapped in his mouth and easily eaten if you're not paying attention. You also want to make sure you break enough teeth to get a gap big enough in the mouth in order to throw a splat bomb through. And also, he'll use whatever remaining teeth he has as projectiles that'll chase you down like little rockets. But Malls is one of the first times we start seeing difficulty difficulty begin to rise. The Octo Oven is the first boss for Splatoon 2, and it's actually a pretty good, unique one. It's actually fun to climb the different loaves of bread and make your way to the top, but the difficulty really isn't too bad. One of the only difficult attacks is it starts spinning around with different showers, and you just have to kind of paint your way around the tower and just keep moving in one direction. The loaves of bread shooting out at you really isn't that difficult, but there is pieces of metal on the bread sometimes where you just can't paint, so it does have a little bit of strategic thought to it that you gotta think about. But overall, this boss battle was really fun, but still on the easier side. Number 16, we have Sanitized Agent 3. This is kind of just a giant 1v1 battle against your former avatar, and it's actually a lot of fun, but it isn't as difficult as something else later on this list with this character. But you have pretty much just a glorified 1v1 where you have to kill him a couple of times in order to win. So he'll blast into the background, use different specials, and throw subs at you as well, and you'll have to use your own subs in order to hit him back. However, it's not incredibly difficult. Most of the difficulty comes into well-timed throws with your splat bombs all the way up on the flying saucer in order to blast him. But him chasing you around the stage with his specials makes you have to stay on your toes for a lot longer. Next up, we have Shiver and her shark companion, Master Mega. Now, this isn't incredibly difficult either as far as Splatoon 3 bosses go, but this does pose somewhat of a challenge. All you have to do is keep spraying your ink at the shark as they're swimming around the platform, and there can be some quick waves that it shoots at you in the same fashion as the brand new Splatana weapons, and you just have to quickly dodge it to the left or the right while you're continuously shooting. The shark will also shoot out different projectiles and tornadoes all over the stage to hit you as it's bouncing around and spinning around the stage, but if you just get out of the way quickly, you're good to go. Now let's crank it up a little bit and actually have some difficulty. Number 14, we have Octo Samurai. This is another big 1v1 against a giant Octarian on a motorbike and also with a crazy roller that is part of his motorbike. You'll just kind of have a roller off, smacking each other back and forth, and you'll have to dodge and react to his attacks, unlike before. You'll have to actually have timed jumps when he spins the roller around and get out of the way at the right second. You'll also use the roller, like I said before, as a giant motorcycle and try to run you over back and forth, which means you have to quickly put ink down and swim away. This wasn't just an engaging boss, but one that kinda upped the difficulty for this game. All the Splatoon 1 bosses are pretty easy, but your first couple of times playing Octo World may have been a little difficult. Your job is to not really necessarily shoot the Octo World itself, but to shoot the stage and make a little trap for him to roll into in order for it to get stuck. Round 1 and 2 is pretty easy, with round 2 actually moving the platforms around, making you have to paint a very specific section, but round 3 cranks it up even higher by having sections that you just cannot paint because they're like glass floors. So you have to lead him to go through a very specific strip, which can be kind of difficult your first couple times through. Once again, not being extremely difficult, and some of you might have found this easier than I have, but it still was a kind of difficult boss as far as Splatoon 1 bosses go. Next up, we have Big Man from Splatoon 3, which plays a lot like Mario Sunshine's Phanta Manta boss battle. This boss battle is very simple. All you have to do is shoot the different manta rays on the ground in order to find Big Man, but they split into multiple different versions and smaller pieces, and they all chase you, and it can get very, very hectic with round 3, with there being so many different phantoms all over the floor and just firing tons of subs and specials at you every which way. You'll have to continuously hop around and make your own path out of all the chaos, because that's all this boss really is tons of chaos, and they will even go completely invisible, making it extremely hard to see where they are because it's nothing but green ink everywhere. This is the first time I've really felt some pressure on this whole list of bosses so far. Number 11, we have Mr. Grizz, the final boss from Splatoon 3. This was a very cinematic boss battle, but not a super hard one, believe it or not. The first phase, you had to make your way all the way to the end of the rocket in order to throw Little Buddy at him by collecting golden eggs along your journey, and this is probably the most difficult part. He'll be shooting tons of specials and subs at you the entire time, and it actually kind of reminds me of the hectic final battle of Splatoon 1's first DJ Octavio boss. Now this is also really interesting because he can also turn the stage itself and flip it and put you in a little maze, which can be kind of hard to navigate towards the end of the boss battle section. Not to mention, tons of enemies will also spawn on the rocket, and if you touch the fuzzy ooze whatsoever, you automatically die and have to repeat that phase all over again. And phase 2 has you flying a giant saucer in space in order to clean up the fuzzy ooze from Mr. Grizz. This is probably one of the easiest parts of the entire battle itself. You have tons of time on the clock, and it's actually not that much of a hurry as it looks, and all you have to do is go up to them and start cleaning them off like a car wash. The hardest part is enemies spawning on top of the ship, which means you have to pop out and kill them all before continuing, but besides that, this boss battle really isn't one of the hardest ones. Am I the only one that died a lot to Fry on my initial playthrough? Now obviously after going back with my fully leveled up avatar, it really wasn't that bad. But at first, I was actually getting smacked by the eels that she would throw. She uses the Octo Stomp, or really the dead Octo Stomp this time around, to spin around the stage and shoot projectiles at you, while also having eels pop up, and they will also shoot projectiles at you, and even use themselves as projectiles. Now phase 1 is a breeze, and phase 2 is where it starts kicking it up. The eels will actually spin around the cube itself, and they take a lot of shots in order to kill them, especially when you're weak as you are in the very beginning of this game. And they will spin around the stage very fast, making you have to keep your eyes on each one. They can also rain down from the sky and explode like little tenta-missiles as well, and they can all chase you in a giant swarm, which will break your shield instantly. And let's face it, if your shield is broken in this stage, you're most likely going to die because you need to move out of the way very fast, or everything, and I mean everything on the stage, will catch you. So of course I think it comes down to what level you are, so if you're at a very beginning level, which you probably will be fighting this boss, you might have a little bit of a tough time defeating all these eels as quickly. The Octo Shower is one of my favorite bosses within Splatoon. It's just these little Octarians carrying a giant shower plug, which is very interesting for sure, but this thing is crazy. It has tons of specials and subs that I can throw at you the entire time, keeping you on your toes, but what makes this so interesting and so difficult for itself is the fact that you have to fight this thing the first time using a charger, which means you have to have very accurate shots in order to hit the Octarians that are carrying this thing. By the end, you'll have 4 of them, and they move very fast, making it very difficult to hit these things, and they'll also be aware of your shot sometimes and move out of the way at the last second. Every now and then, he'll actually rush you with a shower spread that will immediately break your shield on contact, which means you have to completely get out of the way or you're devastated. But even with the phase 3 versions, they will boost out of the way at the very last second when you're shooting, making it very hard, meaning that you have to be a very good sniper in order to beat this boss, not just an average one. Every time I revisit this boss battle, I never really have as many problems as I did the first couple of times. Once again, am I the only one that had as much trouble with this thing at first? I mean, I just kept failing over and over and over again and running out of time every single time. It took me maybe 10 tries to find the best optimal path, and the path that I was taking just was never a good one. And maybe it just, I didn't know where I was going on this giant statue, but that's what makes this so difficult, is that every part of the statue can pretty much be inked and be swam on, which means you can go pretty much any way you want, but you have to find the most optimal path in order to save the most time. Nowadays, it's really not a big problem because I think my brain is just embedded with where to go, but I used to get lost all the time, and this thing is just so big and massive, it's very easy to miss a bomb and run the clock down. Number 7, we have the Neo Octo Stomp from Splatoon 2. This isn't too bad until you start getting to the clips on his face, which you have to break off, and then eventually opening up his face for 3 faces. This can be extremely difficult to dodge as it's moving at you so quick and has such an incredible range from left to right. But what makes this so difficult is the weapon that you have is the Splatbrella, which makes this extremely hard to hit it from anywhere but extremely close, which means you have to get right next to the thing in order to blast it, and the damage still isn't that good because the clips are so far away, which means it's going to take you a while in order to break this thing down. And when it dives at you, sometimes you just gotta abandon ship and kind of jump off the stage to the lower level. Also, with an enemy Octarian turret on top, this can be a difficult boss battle. Splatoon 1's final boss battle against DJ Octavio is a perfect balance of difficulty and also extreme fun to fight. But the difficulty here can definitely ramp up, and you can feel it slowly increase as you move to each new section after each checkpoint. Because what makes this so hard is not necessarily DJ Octavio himself, because a lot of the attacks will continue to repeat, but the stage itself, because the stage will get skinnier and certain sections will be blocked off by nothing but endless pits that you could fall down. So you have to always watch your feet, but also keep your head up and see what DJ Octavio is shooting at you the entire time. And the stage itself is just full of different elements that you've seen so far throughout your entire journey, like invisible paths that you'll have to ink in order to make sure you can progress forward. And at the end, you're left with one final stretch of platforms, which means there's really nowhere to go left and nowhere to go right. And you can't really back up because you don't know what's behind you without completely turning the camera, leaving your back exposed to all the various weapons. The killer whale flying at you and different rockets, and also Octarian spawning right beside you is pure chaos, while he's also shooting his fist and giant rockets at you in order to volley back and forth with him. There's so much going on, it's so chaotic, but it's also so good, but it is a very difficult boss battle. The Octo Oven XXL is the definition of just bigger, better, faster, and stronger. It doesn't do too much different from the original boss battle in Splatoon 2, but the Octo Expansion version just makes things so much harder for you. What makes this challenge so difficult is the weapon. The Octo Brush is so annoying to use here because it's not strong enough to defeat the Octarians very quickly, and also it's hard to hit anything above you when you're below them and need to climb up the tower. You'll get absolutely pelted by the enemies at the top to no end, and it is extremely difficult. Your best bet is always just chucking splat bombs upward and trying to kill everything that's up there, but even the splash walls blocking your access can make this one of the most difficult bosses. Not to mention, the machine is going to quickly flood the stage in green ink, and you have to continuously keep moving over in one direction because it's chasing you violently. And not to mention, the loaves of bread are not shooting out slow this time around. They're firing at you, meaning if you're anywhere near the loaves of bread when they come out, you'll get blasted, and if you swim to the wrong side, you'll also get sideswept by one and lose your shield instantly. Number 4, we have the Octo Stomp Redux from the Octo Expansion. This is where we start to see the brutality of some of these bosses. Your goal is to break off the clip on his face and wait for them to fall over in order to climb up it and hit the thing on top. Yes, it can shoot a giant turret on top of his head, but this isn't what makes it difficult. The one thing is eventually it will open his face with 3 different faces, which means you have to shoot a clip off of each face, which can be very difficult. And when it rushes you like this, I feel like your only option is to swim off the stage because it's most likely going to hit you every single time. But still, another difficult part about this boss is it loves to shoot bubbles, and the bubbles will be all over the place, especially when it comes to you having to climb the cube. The bubbles will be right in your way, and it takes just way too long to pop them. You won't be able to get up there quick enough. But this is definitely the most intense and hardest version of the Octo Stomp we have seen so far. The Octo Shower Supreme isn't too bad. Honestly, I mean, it's kind of the same boss battle, it just does things a lot quicker and shoots attacks out a lot faster as well, but besides that, pretty much the same boss battle. Well, what makes this so difficult? Let me tell you. This stupid inkjet. Yeah, you're forced to use the inkjet in order to take this thing down the entire time, which makes this battle significantly harder because now you don't have the accuracy, at least, of a charger. Now you have to shoot random blast shots up into the air and just pray that they hit, because especially once they start blasting around and dodging your attacks and actually reacting to them, it's almost kind of luck-based, where you just have to blast up there and just hope that it stands still for a second in order for you to shoot it. All while getting absolutely bombarded by rockets that are actually homing in on you. This can just be one of the most difficult boss battles, seriously, of all Splatoon. And you have to get close enough to make sure your shots hit, but not too close or you'll get blasted by one of its mini attacks that not only are faster, but he can chain together one special after the next without giving you any breathing room or time to set up in order to shoot your shots. So, good luck with this one. It's funny how easy the normal version of Octo Samurai is, but here we are with Revenge of the Octo Samurai at number 2 as the second hardest boss within Splatoon? How is this even possible? Well, the same thing with the Octo Shower. They make you completely underwhelming here by throwing you in a ball. You are supposed to take this guy down using the Baller Special the entire time, which is terrible. It's actually pretty unique and clever and can really pose a challenge to the point where it is frustratingly difficult. For one, the attack damage is so minor, which means you'll probably have to explode a good 7 to 8 times in order to get close to killing this guy. And if he hits you really at all, odds are you're gonna fly off the stage. There are some fences spread out randomly throughout the stage, but you're just going to have to get lucky with if you hit the fence or fly off in a gap section. It's probably very difficult to tell while watching this, but it's very difficult to get moving in one direction, which means if you get hit by one attack or even just try to start rolling after sitting idle for a while or after exploding, it takes a very long time to gain that momentum to move out of the way, which means a lot of the time you're just a sitting duck and you have to continuously keep moving to make sure you don't get clapped. This boss was very frustrating, all thanks to the weapon that you get, and yeah, it probably definitely plagued a lot of other players as well. And coming in at number 1 as the most difficult boss battle in Splatoon is Inner Agent 3 at the end of the Octo Expansion from Splatoon 2. The first time you fight him at the end of the Octo Expansion really isn't too bad, but the very end of the game gives you one more fight against the guy, and it is brutal. toll. I remember spending over 3 to 4 hours alone trying to finally kill this guy. And it's a complete mind game. You have to have perfect shots when you get the chance and have to completely get out of the way or you will get beamed. The AI's aim is impeccable and you are quickly damaged with just 2 to 3 shots and almost on the verge of death. It's not even the subs or specials that they use, which, yeah, can be difficult as well because they're using splashdown like a maniac all the time, but it's really just the shooting. The shooting is so unfair. They do not miss, which means you have to place your shots perfectly or you're gone. I didn't even mention the fact that he's using a hero shot and for some reason he can roll all over the stage and dodge your attacks by just simply rolling like he's got dualies. It's incredible. He'll dodge every single attack. You can't just throw splat bombs, he'll see it and dodge it as well. Everything you do, he's miles above you. He is definitely trained for this situation, and you have to make sure that you continue to ink paths for yourself or you'll get stuck and get splashed down on immediately. This was the only boss in the entire series of Splatoon. When I finally beat them, I sighed of relief, set the controller down, and had to take a walk outside because of how difficult and frustrating this was for me. And that is why it is my #1 hardest boss battle within the entire Splatoon franchise. And that is my list of all 22 Splatoon bosses ranked from the easiest to the hardest. Let me know what your ranking would be and if you agree with mine or disagree with mine. What boss gave you the most difficulty on your playthroughs? And thank you so much for tuning in today. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure you stop what you're doing right now, leave a like, and subscribe to stay up to date on all things Splatoon all the time. Thank you so much for tuning in, and like always, I'll see you all on the next one. See you guys.